Most stories about European empires in the South Asian subcontinent start with the British. But did you know that there was a time when the whole colonial game almost went to the French instead? That the subcontinent could have become a dominion of Paris, not London. And that it all hinged on the ambition, the genius, and the ultimate failure of one fascinating, forgotten man. This is the story of Joseph-François Dupleix, the salesman who tried to sell France an empire and how he nearly pulled it off. Our story begins not on a battlefield, but in a counting house. Dupleix was born in 1697 into a world of money and commerce. His father was a director of the French East India Company, which was, first and foremost, a business. Its goal wasn't to paint the map blue for a king, but to turn a profit for its shareholders. A commercial DNA was baked into Dupleix from the start. He wasn't a noble soldier seeking glory. He was a corporate man, a pragmatist. He joined the company and was sent to India, a land of immense wealth and great complexity, where European trading posts were just tiny dots on the coast of a vast and powerful continent. He started in the French outpost of Chandanagar in Bengal, and he was brilliant at it. He learned local languages, immersed himself in the culture, and understood the economic currents. He made the post hugely profitable. His success got him noticed. And in 1742, he was appointed the Governor-General of all French holdings in India. His headquarters was the bustling town of Pondicherry. Now, if he had just kept to trading silk and spices, he would be a footnote in history. But Dupleix looked at the Indian political landscape and saw something no other European had. He saw not a market, but a chessboard. India in the 1740s was in turmoil. The mighty Mughal Empire, which had ruled most of the subcontinent for centuries, was cracking apart. Local governors were declaring themselves independent nawabs. Rivals were fighting over the fragments. For the European companies, this was a nightmare. Their fragile trading posts were vulnerable to the whims of every new local strongman who emerged from the chaos. The British and French response was typically European. They started fighting each other. The War of Austrian Succession in Europe spilled over into India, becoming the first Carnatic War. It was a messy affair that gave Dupleix a crucial idea. He realized that small, well-trained European armies, especially the artillery, could utterly defeat much larger Indian forces. It wasn't about the number of men, it was about training and firepower. This was the key. When the next European war kicked off, the 7 Years' War, which became the Second Carnatic War back in India, Dupleix was ready to play his new game. He was no longer just a company governor, he was a kingmaker. His strategy was simple and a game changer. He would go ahead and pick a side in a local succession dispute. The French would provide the military muscle, a few hundred well-drilled French sepoys, that is, Indian soldiers trained in European tactics, and a handful of European officers. In return, the French-backed candidate, once victorious, would handsomely reward the company. The rewards for Dupleix were vast sums of money, land, and most importantly, trading privileges that would crush their British rivals. It was a corporate takeover funded by future profits and secured by gunpowder. For Dupleix, the greatest weapon wasn't a cannon, but a man. The Marquis de Bussy was a military commander of sheer brilliance. Dupleix sent Bussy and his army inland to the Deccan Plateau, the heart of the chessboard. Bussy became the power behind the throne, propping up a claimant to become the Nizam of Hyderabad, the most powerful ruler in South India. For years, Bussy and his tiny force were the kingmakers of the Deccan, and the French influence stretched across the interior. It was an incredible achievement. They weren't just traders on the coast anymore, they were the brokers of political power. Meanwhile, Dupleix was acting less like an employee and more like an Indian prince himself. He held court in Pondicherry, receiving ambassadors in magnificent style, wearing Indian clothes, and adopting the customs of the land. He understood that in India, perception was power. He had to look the part of a powerful patron, not a mere merchant. He was building French influence, not through outright conquest, but through a web of alliances, subsidies, and military contracts. He was creating proto-empire, and it was working. The British East India Company was on the ropes. Their leaders in Madras were hesitant to get involved in native politics. They were getting outmaneuvered at every turn. Dupleix's corporate strategy was beating the traditional British one. French influence was at its peak. For a moment, it looked like France would dominate Indian subcontinent. The map was, in theory, there for the taking. But then it all fell apart. And the collapse didn't come from a British army. It came from a letter from Paris. The directors of the French East India Company were accountants, not visionaries. They looked at Dupleix's reports and didn't see the brilliant strategic picture. They saw the balance sheet. All this warfare, maintaining Bussy's army, bribing local officials, it was incredibly expensive. The profits they were used to seeing from simple trade had dried up, replaced by promises of future riches and IOUs from Indian princes. They grew nervous and impatient. They wanted a return on investment, not an empire. They failed to understand Dupleix's grand vision. To them, he was a reckless employee, spending the company's money on expensive foreign wars. They started denying him funds and reinforcements. The final blow came when they opened up peace negotiations with the British behind his back. In 1754, they recalled him to France. He was, for all intents and purposes, fired. Dupleix left India believing he was on the cusp of total victory, only to be sacked by his own bosses for achieving it. His misery was to increase. The company, furious at the debts he had incurred, demanded he repay them. The man who had tried to gift France an Indian empire spent his final years in poverty and obscurity, battling lawsuits in Paris. He died in 1763, a broken and forgotten man. In a final twist of irony, that very same year, the 7 Years' War ended. The treaty that concluded the global conflict formally ended France's imperial ambitions in India for good. The British, who had finally found their own Dupleix, and the aggressive Robert Clive, were left as the dominant power. Dupleix is the ultimate what-if of South Asian history. He was a man decades ahead of his time. He invented the playbook for how European powers would eventually control India. Not through mass migration or direct rule, but through political manipulation and military subsidies. He showed that the real power lay not in coastal forts, but in influencing the courts of Indian princes. The French company wanted a trader. They got a strategic genius, and they didn't know what to do with him. The British East India Company, after initial hesitation, learned Dupleix's lessons all too well. They adopted his methods, they funded the armies, and they played the political game with a ruthlessness that eventually won them the ultimate prize. Joseph-François Dupleix was the wrong man in the right place at the right time, working for the wrong company. He wasn't just a man who tried to build a French empire in India. He was the man who figured out the rules of the colonial game, only to have his own team take him out of it, just as he was about to win. While his imperial dream died with him, Joseph-François Dupleix left an indelible mark on the French presence in India, a legacy that is physically present in the streets of Pondicherry. His ambitious governance transformed the trading post into a formidable capital, and the city's distinctive grid pattern, central promenades, and elegant colonial architecture date back to his era of grand ambition, a time when Pondicherry was the seat of a would-be power. Today, that history is Pondicherry's unique selling point. The city's French flavor, from its boulevards and Tamil French cuisine to the preserved villas and the use of the language, is a direct tourist attraction and is built upon the foundation Dupleix laid. A statue of him now stands not as a symbol of conquest, but as a quiet, almost forgotten monument to a failed ambition, overshadowed by the vibrant, peaceful Indo-French cultural fusion that his efforts accidentally helped to create and preserve long after the French Empire was gone.